It's the end of October, and you know what that means?
What does that mean, Galen?
It's time to face the deep, dark terrors of our greatest fears.
Like anime?
No, I'm talking actually, yeah, you got it in one. Good job. Welcome to the Music Arcade. Let's go. Woo! Hello, everyone, and welcome to arguably the most cursed episode of Music Arcade yet.
You are Galen the Sound Guy Firestone, right?
Last I checked, it might help if I introduced myself. Thank you for reminding me.
You're welcome. Honestly, it's in the continuity. I'm Monaco. Hello. We are barely holding together.
Barely holding together is almost giving us credit. This is held together by duct tape and wishes at best.
Yeah, lots of wishes. It's not our usual day.
Nope.
Everything that could have gone wrong and some things we didn't even know could go wrong went wrong.
Yup.
But we are here.
We are here. We made it. And we are talking about an equally cursed subject. Dynasty Warriors, but anime.
I mean, it's half cursed. Dynasty Warriors is fun.
Honestly,
it's just good old fun.
It is. And we've talked about that before. This is one of these cases where I've actually played all three games of my selections, which is not always the case when it comes to these episodes. Sometimes I gotta go searching.
It's not a claim I can make.
Yeah. Yeah, so Dynasty Warriors as a franchise is a bunch of different games, and some of them are anime-related. And they're actually pretty good at this. They're pretty good at adaptations.
Yeah, like, a lot of anime or other forms of media. I mean, okay, to take it from the other angle, Dynasty Warriors and the Warriors series in general are just one of the best representation of big heroes mowing down mooks hordes after hordes.
Yeah.
And it turns out that as a power fantasy, as a story device, as a framing device, it extends to things beyond just these games, and sometimes those stories take some importance and then get into contact and get adapted into games that fit them very well.
Yeah. One of my favorite games of all time is a adaptation that Dynasty Warriors did, so I would argue actually two of my favorite games of all time, if you're also including Hyrule Warriors. So, yeah, I really have a hard time saying that they're not good at adapting things into their medium very effectively.
Yeah. Like, sometimes they can phone it in a little bit, but a lot of times, like, when the basis is that strong, giving it a fancy coat of paint only elevates the product.
Fully agreed. And for the sake of full transparency, one of the games I will be talking about today is a game where they phoned it in, but I don't think it'd be a good episode if we didn't cover at least one of those.
Exactly.
And with that and all of the nonsense behind us, I think we should just go ahead and dive right into our proof of concept, Dynasty Warriors Gundam 3.
Yeah, I'm the one that picked it, and I am peripherally familiar with some Gundam material. I watched the original three movies that adapted the first Gundam series, so I have a bit of familiarity with that. I have a couple of Gundam models that I still need to assemble, and one of them has been taking dust for like a year now.
Oh dear.
But I still plan to do it some days. And overall, it's one of those series that's pretty good, but I haven't really gotten the click, the justification, the excuse to actually go ahead and watch one of the seasons.
Whereas my association with Gundam is much less than that. I'm not really an anime fan to begin with, so most of what I remember is the old Robotech Saturday morning cartoon, which was mashed together from 2 seasons of that, I think.
Alright, I didn't know they adapted and translated Gundam into that, because...
Was it Gundam? Now I'm second-guessing myself. Hang on.
Yeah, because Robotech's a bit of a different franchise, but...
It is a different franchise? Uh-oh.
Yes. Yeah, Robotech is the same universe as the Mech Warriors, I believe.
It's not. It's Macross.
Ah, I see. Yeah.
Okay, never mind. I didn't even... I was wrong about even that. So yeah, my entire association with Gundam is apparently just seeing them on the shelf in Don Quixote. That's as much as I got now.
Yeah, and your search explained the joke I heard like 6 or 7 years ago in a short sketch, so we've achieved that.
Yay!
Anyway.
So I'm deeply unfamiliar with this material.
Yeah. Oh, and of course I also have seen some parts of G Gundam, which is a bit of its own thing, and which basically takes Gundam's mix of action and deeply involved intergalactic political drama, and cranks up the action and the heroics and the shonen energy, which makes for some deeply silly things, and I say that as a compliment.
I miss Christian Avasarala already. I understand you don't know who that is.
Yes. But, so, point is, I haven't played Dynasty Warriors Gundam 3 or any other Dynasty Warriors Gundam, so I was very curious when came the time to search for music for this episode as to what they had, and it turns out what they have is basically music that would fit in Dynasty Warriors.
Yeah, I flat out said in my notes, this would sound right at home, but Dynasty Warriors like 4 to 5. It's very exactly. Masa.
It's got those guitars, right?
Yeah, it's got the Dynasty Warriors guitars. It's right there. With all the music I picked, none of it sounded like Dynasty Warriors, so I was actually kind of surprised to hear a song that sounded like it belonged to the franchise.
Exactly my thought and why I picked it, because it's still kind of its own thing. It has a bit more of an electric sound, especially in the background, and it's way more present in other themes in this entry, in this game, that is. But this one really feels like a Dynasty Warriors soundtrack.
It does.
It still fits, because whether you on your own on a horse or in a giant robot, charging in a desperate battle, mowing down hundreds of mooks, still sounds cool when you put that kind of music on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, one of the things that I noticed throughout going through this and throughout paying attention to my other adaptations is they are very good at adapting the music from other sources, too. You know, Hyrule Warriors sounds like Zelda but rock.
Exactly.
Persona 5 Strikers was half composed by Shoji Meguro anyway. Like, they're very good at exactly this sort of thing. So hearing something that sounds so, like, traditionally Dynasty Warriors is almost, again, it's almost surprising. This doesn't feel like an adaptation the same way the others do. Yeah,
and yet I'm pretty sure that this won't feel out of place inside of its game.
I'm sure it won't. I mean, it's Dynasty Warriors. Rock guitars are kind of part of the vibe.
Yeah. Also of note, in that track is the Type 1 in the title. It's First Impact Type 1. Every track in Dynasty Warriors Gundam 3 that are, I presume, entreprises from Gundam 1 and 2 have 3 different types, which are the same melody but different instrumentation. I presume one is for when you activate some sort of super mode, and one is for when you actively battling, while one is for when you are going through the level.
Okay. And
I always like those little variations like that, going seamlessly from one to another.
Variable mix is a lot of fun. Lord knows that's one of the things I love about Keiichi Okabe. So
absolutely. It was great in Dragon Guard 3 and the Neo games, and no reason why it wouldn't be great here.
Yeah, absolutely. That's also a little unusual for Dynasty Warriors to do. Normally, they just have a stage music, and sometimes the stage music changes or varies. Having a variable mix is actually fairly different for them, so cool.
Yeah, I believe it was the case in Hyrule Warriors and in the Fire Emblem Warriors too, so I guess this is something they want for their adaptations, but not necessarily for their core series.
Yeah. Well, good for them. I mean, this sounds great. I'm very happy about this. And
exactly. And all three types are listenable on their own. It's not like in Hyrule Warriors where the song makes sense when you are in game and you have 15 seconds of that variation of the song, but it's unlistenable on its own.
Right.
Where it's not that pushed. And I think the result is very enjoyable.
I would agree with that. I like this song a lot. I like this honestly better than any of my picks.
Yeah. I mean, we're using the Warriors game as a mainstay backup topic because there's so much good music in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And by narrowing the scope, we can kind of explore different aspects of it. And it's fun to see that even in that kind of subsection of the Warriors game, we still have those mainstay tunes and instruments and rhythms that are in there.
Yeah, or we could just do something completely and utterly different like what they did in Fate Samurai Remnant.
Exactly, with something that's very much more solemn and weighty.
Right. So Fate Samurai Remnant is a game I adore. It's a more recent title. It definitely plays Musou adjacent, but it is by Omega Force, and it focuses more on the 1v1 battles, so it has more common DNA with, like, Dynasty Warriors 4 almost in that regard.
Yeah, or from what I've seen from a couple of your streams that I peeped, it almost has more in common with the structure of Persona 5 Scramble.
Yeah, very much in that same style. Strikers was the better dungeon crawler, Scramble being its Japanese name.
Right.
Yeah, Strikers was the better dungeon crawler because it was an actual dungeon crawler. This one's a little more open-worldy. If I had to pick between them, I'd pick Persona 5 Strikers every day of the week, but, I mean, Fate Samurai Remnant is still a great game and very worth playing. The music, on the other hand, I found to be largely unmemorable, and I think that might be Fate's fault.
Yeah, I guess they went close to the source material and close to what tone other game and anime in the series have instead of really going with a warrior start to it.
Yeah, and I think that was almost to its detriment, because I remember when we did a prior episode where I compared Arturia's theme from the original anime or visual novel or wherever it was from to the version in Fate Extella. I found the Fate Extella one to be very improved. That game was made by Marvelous and therefore is not eligible for this episode. But I think I'm discovering that I don't actually like the Fate OST, and the closer you skew to it, the more bored of it I get.
Honestly, that's not too surprising for me, because while I haven't really played any Fate games myself, it's a very common theme in weeb circles, for short, and if the soundtrack was good to very good, I wouldn't hear anything but that, I assume. Like, it would be pushed on the level of a Toho soundtrack.
Yeah, exactly. And I've played the heck out of Fate Samurai Remnant. I'm sure I've heard this song a dozen times. I have no recollection of it. I've listened to it multiple times in the run-up to this episode just taking notes. The second I stop playing it, I fail to remember what it sounds like. That's not a great sign for this song.
Yeah, and it's not even that it's bad, but this isn't what I think of when I think of a Warriors game battle theme.
No, not at all. It's got a lot of violin, I think.
Yeah?
That's what I wrote in my notes. I have to assume that's true.
Yeah, no, it sure has violins.
Yeah,
but it needs violence.
It needs violence, that's correct. Wow, that was a good wordplay. I approve of that one.
It happened live.
I love it.
No time to be filtered anyway. I'm glad it came out nicely.
It did. Well done. I wish I had more to say on this song, but that's the problem with it. It just kind of falls over.
Yeah, and honestly, when I first listened to it, I just skimmed at different spots, and it's never really a good sign when you don't know where you are in the song, because every bit sounds like every other bit of the song.
Yeah. And we both know that the composers of this franchise are capable of way better than this, so...
Absolutely.
I feel like I have to blame Fate for this one.
Yeah. Plus, it's fun to blame Fate, honestly.
It is fun to blame Fate. For the record, the fact that the soundtrack is unmemorable should not detract you from playing Fate Samurai Remnant if you have the itch to do so. It's a really, really good game.
Oh, yeah. And if you think I've played one Warrior game, I've played them all, you haven't.
No.
And one of the furthest game that is from Omega Force that you could play is probably this one.
It's down there. Didn't Omega Force specifically also do Zilol?
I think they did, yeah.
Yeah, that one's definitely like the weirdo, because it's like, we're going to make an RPG now, like an actual RPG. I don't know how it turned out. I have very limited familiarity with it, but I
mean, okay. I will add that it's good, different, weird, not Achilles Warriors of Troy weird, where they've tried things and not much has landed.
Well, Warriors of Troy wasn't Omega Force. That was a Canadian development team.
Oh, was it now?
Yes, that one surprised me too. So it was actually handled by a completely different group within the Koei Tecmo auspices, but it wasn't Omega Force.
I see.
Now, I actually liked Warriors of Troy. Warriors Legends of Troy. Boy, that is a complicated name. I actually liked that one. I thought it was pretty cool. And a lot of their decisions ended up going into and informing what ended up being Dynasty Warriors 7, which was good because it kind of took the best parts of that game. So
yeah, and also it gave us Achilles in Warriors Orochi 3, which was a blast to play.
Oh, he was great. I would have loved to have seen some other characters from that too. I would have loved to see Penthesilea or even Paris of all people. Paris was shockingly good in that game.
Oh yeah, and at that point they managed to have finally nailed making archers that were fun to play.
Also a thing that started to happen in Dynasty Warriors 7 as well. As I said, Dynasty Warriors 7 took a lot of the best parts of Legends of Troy and made that happen.
Oh, yeah.
It says a lot that we're going off on even more tangents than usual on this song because there's just nothing to say on it. Let's move on.
Yeah, alright. Then let's move on to the one game we both picked.
Yes.
Arslan Warriors.
This one was surprisingly good. I liked Arslan a lot.
And I didn't, but that's because I was exposed to the anime and the manga before playing the game, and my main problem with the game was that it held to the anime in particular extremely closely, and I hate consuming the same content multiple times, so...
Oh, we're going to be talking about that later as well. That's another thing that Omega Force does with these adaptations, is hard adapts them. They do not take liberties.
Yeah, and especially with this one, I found that there's not a time when you can take a break. It goes from mission to cutscene to mission to cutscene. There's no lobby waiting room when you can adjust things at your pace. Mm-hmm. And so it felt almost oppressive to play in the long run.
I didn't really get that impression, but that also... I kind of get why they would do that, though. Like, building a camp in that game feels like an exercise of utility, given how often the characters move around.
Exactly.
I feel like it'd be a whole lot of work that may not necessarily be appreciated.
Yeah, and another thing that was funny about when I was watching the Arslan anime in particular is that it did feel very video gamey in its story structure, even when just watching it. Mm-hmm. But I didn't think about Dynasty Warriors. I thought Fire Emblem. Like, some of the conversation I could almost listen to the jingles after two characters had a sport conversation between one battle and the next.
As we've discovered from the two Fire Emblem Warriors games, that combination works better than you might think anyway, so...
Absolutely, it does. And to get back to the game, honestly, the way they differentiated the characters and had very varied objectives was super fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that Arslan was surprisingly good as an adaptation, and that's literally the whole reason I bought it. I was kind of jonesing for a Dynasty Warriors game. This was, I think, after Dynasty Warriors 7 or something, and I read an article on Kotaku, a review of it, who says, if you like Warriors, this is a good Warriors game. I ended up getting 100%. Yeah, I ended up getting 100% of Steam achievements on it. So I'm like, yep, this is good.
No, great. And I didn't even realize they had it on Steam. I played it on the PS3 and I thought they just kept it to PlayStation systems for some reason.
I'm double checking, make sure I'm not talking out of my butt, but I'm pretty sure. Am I crazy? Oh, did I put it up here maybe? I did. Arslan the Warriors of Legend, top of my favorites.
Yep.
I did put it in my favorites for good reason. It's a good game.
And it's still $60 somehow. Good job, Koike.
Good job, Koei. I hate their pricing, but that's not really relevant to this conversation.
Trust me, as an Atelier fan, I hate their pricing even more than you do.
I believe it. All of their games do this. Dynasty Warriors does this.
Yes.
Dead or Alive does this. Atelier does this. Their side games does this. I can't even play Knights of Azure 2, which I've wanted to at least try out because I've heard such mixed things on it, but there's a part of me that's like, is it as bad as people say? Nope, that's just too expensive. I'm like, what am I supposed to do here?
Pirate, I guess.
I don't...
No, wait, the Pirate Warriors conversation is later.
Right. Okay, so this one is still very orchestral as a soundtrack compared to normal Dynasty Warriors fare.
It very much is, but it has a bit more of rhythm and even at times a groove to it.
Yeah, it sounds way better than my brain just blanked on it. It sounds way better than Fate's Era Remnant does, that's for sure.
Yeah. It still carries on the story and the setting it wants to carry, but it doesn't feel the need to posture and to take itself too seriously.
Yeah.
Like, it lets you let loose sometimes, you know? And that gives us tracks like Advance in particular, which feel very satisfying.
Yeah.
It's I imagine, it's been a while since I played it, and so I imagine it's a thing that happens after some objectives in multiple missions, but it's a very solid one.
Yep, I fully believe it. It sounds like it's a much better... Again, it's much better than Fate. I really like the use of trumpet here. I think the trumpet line is very strong. That is one thing I did notice when going through this instrument. That's one thing I noticed when going through this soundtrack is that a lot of the songs actually kind of press the featured instrument button.
Yeah, it really does. And I maybe would have liked a little more instruments from the Middle East, because it's an anime based on essentially fantasy ancient Persia.
Right.
With some reaches towards Indian territories and the likes.
Yeah, I remember that whole, not India arc.
Yeah. But it seems to stay pretty European, pretty conventional, which is a bit of a shame. But when it comes to the structure of the songs rather than the choice of instruments, I think there's some good stuff here.
I would agree. Again, this is one that I would... Out of the songs that I picked, my Arslan pick is my favorite.
Yeah.
I found myself picking a lot that I didn't actually like that much.
Yeah. In particular, during my selection, I outright hated a few tracks. The first 6 or 7 tracks, I was just like, this is just bad. Why is it so bad? Turns out unlike most of the time when I'm listening and making research from the comfort of my desktop setup, because we were a bit pressed for time, I did some of my research listening outside on the commute to and from work with earbuds, which meant that there were basically no percussions worth talking about. And that ruined the songs.
Oh yeah, no, you need to have percussion in a Dynasty Warriors game.
Especially since this one, because the war drums are like a third of the appeal on some of the songs, easily.
Yeah, very much so.
And without that, it feels absolutely toothless.
It does.
Which for a game soundtrack that doesn't go hard by its definition, but kind of lets it gives you the message and lets you interpret it, instead of, say, Dynasty Warriors classic track, which is like, you should be excited for the action while shaking you by the shoulders. This one is more polite in letting you enjoy it instead of making you enjoy it by force or else.
There's definitely room for making you enjoy it by force or else, but I think the subtlety of the soundtrack actually kind of works in its favor, because it still has that energy, but it isn't shoving it down your throat, and it does create a more tense atmosphere than Dynasty Warriors as a result of this.
Yeah, like, I think it's fair to say that between all of the adaptations, Arslan is probably the most grounded.
It really is, and it does help that in the narrative, a lot of the time Arslan himself is on the back foot, and he's like running from stuff or going from place to place or always in some kind of trouble. So that tension in the soundtrack really does help work with that.
Yeah, like, he knows how to fight, but he's not a warrior hero, so to speak. His main strength isn't his strength.
Yeah, it says a lot.
That's Darion's job.
Yeah, that's Darion's job. It says a lot about this game and the tone it takes that Lu Bu, essentially, is on your side the whole time, and you play as him probably most other than Arslan himself. Like, that's how dire the situation is. You need a Lu Bu on your side in order to make your way through, which is actually kind of a cool take.
Yeah. Part of what makes me really like the anime. Honestly, it's a great watch.
If I was ever going to give it a shot, I would. Did it ever get a second season? I remember the game, like, stopped at the end of the first season, and...
I don't think so, unfortunately.
Cry.
Although, the manga still gets published, I believe.
That's cool, I guess. I was just sort of hoping for an actual conclusion. Like, that is a big problem with the anime sphere. Like, we get situations like Full Metal Alchemist, the original one, which... like, it has to go off the rails because manga be slow, yo. Finish your works, guys. Don't be Beethoven.
Good advice indeed. But before we take way too good of a transition, I still must say about Arslan first that we've talked before about adapting music from the source material, and I don't remember that much of the music from the source material. I don't know how closely or how far it's adapted. It felt kind of far, and in particular I was frustrated that there is one theme that I believe happens in the summary of previous event, which is just called the Arslan, and that's a very strong theme that does a lot with pretty little to make it feel like this grand tale on the level of Romance of the Three Kingdoms and likes.
Yeah,
and it's absolutely nowhere to be heard in Arslan Warriors, whether in a story moment or as an adapted version in a battle, and that's a shame.
Now, we didn't actually talk about my pick here. We really just talked about Advance, but I kind of want to just briefly talk about Mount Bashur.
Let's talk about Mount Bashur.
I don't actually remember the stage this comes from, but boy howdy do I remember these flutes.
I assume this comes from the stage Mount Bashur.
I'm sure it does, but I do remember these flutes, and they kind of stood in my mind. And when I was looking for when I was looking through the soundtrack, like, where's that flute song? Found it pretty quick. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe a lot of the flute sounds were associated with the priestess character whose name eludes me at the moment.
Ferengis?
Yes.
I just remember her because, one, her name reminded me of Ferengi, and two, she does not wear very much, so that's like... Everyone else is pretty reasonable, and then there's you, so you kind of stand out in my mind.
Exactly. And they justified because, she's especially got an affinity with the wind spirits, so blah, 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 justification for fan service.
Yeah, no, they just wanted her nearly naked.
Yes.
That's very evident.
Yes.
I do like fan service, I've been pretty open about that, but this is one case where I'm like, lady, put some clothes on. You just look wrong here.
Yeah, it does get a little weird with her, which is a bit of a shame in the parts where it can detract from her character, which is great by herself. Like, seeing the religious aspect taken on from a different angle and being intermingled with the politics of the situations is really cool and really interesting.
I'm sure it would be if I could remember anything other than her boobs.
Yeah.
It's deeply annoying to me that that's all I really remember about her boobs and her bow. That's it. And I'm like, how did you guys mess up this character design this badly? Anyway, what they didn't mess up were the flutes. Let's get back to the song. We're tangenting again.
Yeah, no. That wasn't a tangent. That was my point, that the flutes, given that they're wind instruments, help bring that to her imagery of her affinity with, in particular, the wind spirits.
Oh.
Yeah. That's why in her character theme in particular, that's where the flutes take the forefront the most.
Now I feel even worse about her character, because I feel like there was something very interesting that could have happened there.
Yeah.
Sigh. Yes, so developers, word to the wise. If you want to put fan service in your game, go ahead and do it. Just make sure it isn't this gratuitous. Have it make sense in the context of the world, please.
Yeah. It makes sense in the context of the world, I guess, but...
I disagree with that wholeheartedly. They kind of forced the issue on it, but no, everyone else is dressed conservatively.
Yeah. Galen, I'll be honest with you, I don't think we're going to solve the issue of distracting fan service in anime during the recording time for this episode.
I know, but still, please developers be smarter than this, I beg you.
That's entirely fair. It's just that I got work tomorrow. I can't fix all of the world's problem today, unfortunately.
I know, that's fair. I have eye surgery in 2 days, so I'm also like, we should move on.
Yeah. Speaking of grievous bodily wounds, let's talk about Berserk.
I hate this game.
Yeah, I heard bad things about it.
This was one of the games that I streamed early on. Kept trying to find something to like about it.
Yeah.
The best thing I can say about this game is it is a complete experience. It has a beginning and a middle and what it thinks is an end. It knows what it was and doesn't pretend to be anything else.
Yeah, because it essentially adapted one arc of the source material.
One arc plus. Apparently, it goes past the eclipse, which is apparently the end of the first major arc, and then on to some other parts, and the final boss is some cloud dude. I called him Emperor Cloudface. That was really all I remembered about him. And he just sort of showed up that level, and I'm like, why do you matter? And suddenly he was the final boss, and the ending hit, and I'm like, I don't understand any of this. This makes me angry. A lot about this game makes me angry. The soundtrack also makes me angry. This is just low-rent Dragon Guard 1.
Yes. That's an excellent comparison.
It's just...
And I don't actively hate it in itself. The problem is that it's for a Berserk game.
Yeah.
And that means you have to square off against Susumu Hirasawa. And that's a tall order.
I'm not familiar with that name.
He composed for all of the anime adaptations, I believe, and he has a very eclectic, interesting, different music style. It's very distinct, and that means that when you compare that to these tracks that are fine, but are what you'd expect from I'm a big guy with a big sword slaying a lot of angry demon dudes, that's a bit of a downgrade.
Yeah, if I had something eclectic, I would have really enjoyed that. Instead, I just got standard issue psycho strings and everything's horrible music. Like, that's the thing that really makes me angry the most about Berserk and the Band of the Hawk. In that, it almost was good in just about every category, and it was bad in every single category. Level design, bad. Character design, bad. Levels, just storyline, it didn't stop at the logical point. It went on to some other thing, far enough that we got a demon rape horse. I wish I was joking about the demon rape horse.
No, that was literally my first contact with Berserk, and the reason why I didn't touch the franchise for the next 15 years.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I don't want to touch the franchise ever again. There's a franchise out there with a demon rape horse. I don't know where you go from there.
Well, given that the author passed away, I believe earlier this year, maybe late last year.
I think it was last year.
Yeah, but he apparently kept notes. His team is continuing his work, and the first tome has been published, and opinions are divided on it.
Okay. I have so much anger towards this game. Like, on so many levels. Like, if it was just a bad game, I would have just stopped playing it. Lord knows I've done that before. But it just kept dangling the possibility of it being good in front of me. Like I'm a cat chasing a string. And I'm just like... And when I finally got to the ending, I just exploded. I just lost it. In fact, there's a clip on YouTube somewhere of me losing my mind over this.
Yeah.
Never mind the fact that Guts was the main character you play as and he was bad. His best move is what I dubbed the Dingus Strike. And I call it that because the move was him just swinging his sword, standing still, swinging his sword back and forth like a dingus for a while.
Amazing.
Yeah. I had to call it the Dingus Strike. I didn't know. What else could you possibly call that move? He was just swinging his sword like a dingus. That's all he was doing. That was the main character of the vast majority of the stages. Some of the other characters were actually fun to play if they let you play them outside of free mode. Like, Casca was alright, Griffith was alright. There was the one lady in, like, the last quarter of the game, the priestess girl. Can you play as her? I don't remember. For the main story, you were playing as Guts and Guts only for all but, like, 2 stages out of, like, 50, and I wish I was joking about that number, too.
Yeah. And I assume there wasn't a system like in Arslan Warriors where you could switch things up a little.
Nope, it was all Guts all the time. You saw a lot of the Dingus Strike.
Yeah. And from what I've heard of Berserk as a whole, Guts is a great character, but that's in part because he's contrasted with the rest of his cast and the rest of his stories and this situation, and where he shines isn't in the depths of battle, but in what happens after, and it feels to me like the game kind of takes the first reading you could have of some of the elements of the game and stops at that, which is not to its service.
Except, and this is the craziest part, not only is this an extremely close adaptation, it literally contains scenes from the anime.
Oh.
And when
it's
they
the
ran
most
out of
anime.
Yeah, no, they actually covered the original like 90s anime. I don't know if that's the original one, but that's like the most known one that you're familiar with. Yeah. And actually had scenes from that in the game until they ran out of anime, and then everything after the anime they just animated themselves in Engine.
Uh-huh.
Which kind of makes me think they really should have stopped at the end of the anime instead of going on to Emperor Cloudface.
Yeah.
because they went on for like another third.
It's so weird. Berserk is apparently kind of cursed to have great source material but terrible adaptations.
I wouldn't know.
Like, the 90s anime was alright, but it was just one arc, and every other attempt to adapt it was disputable at best.
Yeah. The one thing, I have to give credit where it's due, the one thing that I did kind of like about the game is that it actually had, like, legitimate boss fights. Not all of them were fun, but it actually had, like, bosses you had to fight, not just officers. And I'm
with boss mechanics and everything?
With mechanics and everything, yeah.
Sick.
Yeah. I'm not sure they were implemented very well. I don't remember whether Berserk or Hyrule Warriors came first. I feel like the large monsters in Hyrule Warriors did the job a little better, but... no, you actually had bosses with boss mechanics and boss moves, and I'm like, okay, I actually have to pay attention. That's cool.
Yeah.
This game is bad and this music is bad. Like, I really don't like this song. Like, the song's okay. It's the song I like the most out of it, but, like, dude, this is bad.
Yeah.
Go away, Berserk the Pen of the Hawk. This is still my gold standard for bad games on my stream. This is still, like, if a game is worse than this, I will bring it up.
Oh, yeah.
And if I'm comparing a game to this, like I did with Yakuza 3, you know that I am livid at the existence of this thing.
Oof. Yeah, all right.
Yeah. I still remember that episode of Year of the Dragon, where I flat out said I hold this game at a similar level of contempt to Berserk and the Band of the Hawk, and even you understood what that meant.
Yeah. Like, the game doesn't have the best of reputations, and you have a particular relationship to it on top of that.
Yeah. I do not enjoy this video game. Don't play Berserk and the Man of the Hawk unless you really want to punish yourself. It's great for masochists, I guess. Yeah, this just sounds like Drakengard 1, but even weaker, and I'm like, no thank you.
And Drakengard 1 has the excuse of, well, you see, the dullness is actually the point. Because murder is senseless, you see, I am very intelligent.
Taro hadn't quite figured himself out yet, but,
yes.
Still.
But people have been historically generous with him for his large era where he had a shoestring budget and still managed to make interesting things with it.
Yeah. I'm willing to forgive the jank of Drakengard 1 given how he's come along. Like,
yeah.
I almost wish I could have covered that game at some point. Maybe we'll do a I Can't Believe It's Not Warriors episode at some point and do, like, similar spin-offs.
I'm down.
But for now, let's stop talking about Berserk and talk about something I technically don't like but haven't played. I just cannot do One Piece's art style. I'm just not down with it. This song is pretty hype, though.
Yeah. One Piece Pirate Warriors 4 and Onigashima. Now, haven't played the 4, I think I played a little bit of the 3, however. And, given how varied the characters are, the One Piece Warriors series are a great occasion to have very weird movesets.
Yeah.
Like, on the level of diversity of a Hyrule Warrior or better.
Yeah, I saw a clip of some girl who was just throwing her limbs all over the place, and I'm just like, that's wacky. I don't know what any of this means, but that is wacky.
Yeah, and that level of wackiness, that's still main cast material. When it comes to more one-off characters, it gets possibly even weirder.
I kind of respect it.
Yeah, like, I haven't watched the One Piece anime more or less at all. I stopped reading the manga like 35 tomes in. Quite liked it. It's good. I'm like, of the 3 big series that essentially got the post-Dragon Ball era rolling, Naruto, One Piece, and a third that changes every few years, but was Bleach at the start, I'm glad the one that got away with it and keeps going to this day in its form is One Piece, because it's the one that's less lost in the sauce and more just like, sure, let's do whatever's fun today.
I do respect that, and that is a big, like, we've talked about some of the problems of ongoing manga and ongoing anime, and that they get lost in the sauce, as you say, a lot.
Yeah. Meanwhile, this one, the starting point already has sea snails used as a means of international communication.
That is, yeah, no, I do have a sneaking respect for someone who just throws stuff at the wall.
Exactly. Like, the fact I haven't watched it is more about endurance and persistence and time than it is about taste.
That's fair. I can't do the art style. I don't know what it is, but the way these characters look just rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah. And that art style, it isn't the same from the first episode to the 1000 and whoever knows how much now.
That's a lot of episodes.
Yeah.
I don't think there's that many episodes in the combined of all of Star Trek, which should say a lot.
I believe that's the case indeed. And so, all of this is to say that I don't know what Onigashima corresponds to. However, first to come back to the idea that it's an anime that likes to have fun, that shows in the soundtrack for Pirate Warriors 4.
Yeah, let's just start with
blatantly.
mariachi guitars. Let's just, mariachi trumpet. Let's just start with mariachi trumpet.
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't expecting to hear that today.
Yeah, and to be clear, the mariachi trumpet are only in this track. Trumpets at all, that's everywhere. This game soundtrack has as close an affinity to trumpet that are like in a marching band that Dynasty Warriors has with electric guitars.
Nice.
It's everywhere, and it just gives this ambience of you being in for a big brawl, punching everyone, and at the end of the day everyone's alright, and it's all very light-hearted, it's all fun, and they do manage to take that and still instill some tensions at key moments and some threats when you're facing a dude the size of a 7-foot story building. When you face a dude the size of a 7-story tall building. But it's still got that core foundation of we're here to have a good time. We're not going to take ourselves too seriously.
Yeah.
Which blends it and lends itself to a Warriors game very well in a different way from the previous game. Like, this one it feels fit for the gameplay not because of the stakes or the opposition the protagonists have, but because hitting dudes by the 1,000 is fun.
Yeah. That's
kind of fun.
That's kind of the whole thesis at this point, isn't it? Hitting dudes by the thousands is fun. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that, more than the context and the settings, feels conveyed by the Warriors formula. And it's fun to have that kind of different angle that still very much work.
Yeah.
Like, what I played from Pirate Warriors 3 was really fun, and again, pretty close adaptation to some of the anime arcs, but given the length of the anime, they essentially got like 2 maps to cover an entire arc. So that helps streamline things a little.
It almost sounds like I would enjoy, if I wanted to learn about One Piece, I would enjoy playing the games more than I would watching the anime.
Yeah, probably. Like, if nothing else, I assume it's way faster to play the entire game's main story than to watch the anime, even when skipping the filler.
I'd buy that.
Yeah. But anyway, I felt like it was a nice way to have something to close this episode that's just fun.
Yeah.
And drives you forward, and that's still very different. I think the contrast between that and Dynasty Warriors Gundam 3 is important as well, because Dynasty Warriors Gundam 3 very close to Dynasty Warriors.
Yeah.
One Piece Pirate Warriors, very different, but as strong an identity in the music, just very different.
I think we kind of buried the lead. Every last one of these games was done by the same developers, and all of them sound completely different.
Yes, that's true. That's a team that can do a lot, and doing one of several different genres of song is one thing. Doing entire soundtracks with iterative additions of completely different genres and doing some of them that well, is really impressive.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, this just goes to show just how talented Omega Force really are. They have a style of game they like to make, but when they do something, they go all out. The fact that the only game on this list that we're all willing to call a misfire is Berserk, I'm not even sure how much I can blame them. Like, they were still trying, like, I could tell that much. And again, they created a complete experience, maybe too complete. It's hard for me to define, but they are a really special team, and they've done a lot of really cool stuff. And with Dynasty Warriors Origins, as they call it, coming down the pipeline in a couple of months, I'm very much looking forward to what they cook up next.
Oh yeah, same. Especially given that Origins again seems like it's taking what makes the games and the series as a whole so enjoyable, and seeing it once again through a different angle with a different tone. But if the game plays half as satisfying as it looks, I'm on board.
Yeah, same. I guess we'll find out together.
But it's not out yet.
Nope.
So how about we talk about some games that are out, or soon to be out as it'll turn out, in Music Arcade Now Playing.
So I'm going to start with a game that I wish got a Musou adaptation, and that's not even the first time I've said that. I think I've said that pretty consistently over the last 3 years. Arknights.
I'd be down for an Arknights Warriors. I'd play that over the mobile game.
Yeah, I totally. Yeah, no, I've been waving this flag for years. And we got our newest event, Babel, which is one of our big backstory events. It reveals a whole lot about the history and backstory of the game. And it sounds great. What else is new?
Yeah,
it's good music again. Shocker. It's it's Arknights. It sounds good. What else is new? It feels like I have a broken record. The other.
I mean, to be fair, it's a broken, very good record.
That's fair. And the other game I've been playing does not have a soundtrack on YouTube, and that is Void's Vigil, a indie arena almost survivor-like, but too fast-paced to really fall into that category.
Interesting. So short, intense waves?
Short, intense waves, and all of your roguelite stuff comes from the shop between missions. You get very little during the mission itself.
And what's the tone of the soundtrack? Because I briefly had a peep at it, but I haven't watched much of it yet.
Very just techno, EDM, kind of standard issue sci-fi music.
Blood pumping stuff?
Yeah.
Alright.
Not as interesting.
Serviceable, at least.
Yeah, not as interesting as Everspace 2's version of the same thing, but still good.
Alright.
Yeah. And that's it for me. I've had a really, again, not playing very much right now. I'm working on fixing that.
Yeah. On my end, first on the gacha front, shoutouts to Zenless Zone Zero that have expanded the soundtrack a little bit, and aside from a character trailer theme that got to trending because it's just an absolute earworm and they very much knew what they had on their hands, they also added an arc that happens in kind of an outer Outer Rim, they call it. Basically a Mad Max-inspired zone where instead of using ether technology, they are using the ancient esoterical power of oil.
Nice.
Yeah. And
what a lovely day.
Yeah, and so there's rivalries between gangs over who is taking control of the wastes, and that leads throughout the pretty cool story beats to a boss fight with some track that you helped me decipher, because it was something that I almost really liked, but I couldn't understand really what didn't drive me through the edge. And apparently it's inspired by some influences that I didn't know of, and so it felt like a weird listen by itself for the Pompeii boss theme.
Okay.
Yeah. When we had that discussion in the heavy metal channel, you know.
Ah, that.
That's the one. Yeah.
Okay.
And so, aside from that, also played back some Hades 2 because they had their first big content update.
Okay.
Which is very exciting because, like, the state in which the game started early access is already larger than the first Hades.
Oh boy. And Hades was big.
Yes, because it has a lot of years of early access, and this time they just had it hot enough it was fresh out of the oven, but then they were like, still needs more work. And the result is a new area, a new weapon, 2 new uncountable characters, like 2,500 more lines.
Okay.
Crazy stuff. And indeed, the new area, it's Mount Olympus, and they basically introduced it as something that they built up to since the start of Hades 1, essentially. And so Darren Cobb went full orchestral on this one.
Nice.
Yes. So very much grandiose, and with a theme, with a lot of variations, and it says something that, with how good the music are, I barely paid attention to them, because that new area, and even just going there, absolutely destroyed me when I tried repeatedly over the course of the last weekend.
I'm holding off on testing out until the game is like out, because if I get stuck in early access, I know I'm not going to come back to it later.
Yes.
So I'm very excited from everything I've been seeing and hearing about it. This also makes me feel okay, this is going to be good.
Like, the new weapon is a mix of blocking and countering, and also punching people in the face, and also guided missile barrage. It's great.
Sure, because that's the thing that makes sense with the rest of them, but then again, the first game had the ancient railgun, so why not?
Yeah, and the problem about the ancient railgun is that, you know, it had different aspects.
Yeah.
And one of them was the aspect of Eris, the goddess of strife.
Oh, I remember that. That was a nightmare.
Yes. And she's one of the bosses in Hades 2. She still has the railgun.
Oh, God.
Yes. She's the one that guards the way to the new area. I beat her over the course of my, I believe, 15 tries. I beat her 3 times.
That sounds like my win record when I first started beating up Hades himself at the end of the first game, so...
Yeah. That's a pretty comparable difficulty level, especially when you're not all that up to par on her mechanics and the fact that basically everything is death.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
And finally, we have something that goes back full circle even more, because they have announced that Vampire Survivor is getting its 3rd crossover DLC with Castlevania.
I mean, it feels like they were going to do everything but that. This almost feels like the end of the development cycle if they're actually doing it now.
Yes, and at least they are being very cheeky about things in the FAQ, where the last question is about, now, given that it is Castlevania, you're gonna have a vampire, right? And technically it has already been confirmed, but it's not, they haven't shown in any of the trailers Dracula. And yes, technically they have, for those that played Aria and Dawn of Sorrow.
Yeah, Soma Cruz is there.
Yes,
so he's
but not Dracula.
But, however, just to put the asterisk there, Soma isn't technically a vampire.
Yes.
So, sure,
Exactly. And they have shown other characters that definitely are vampires at some point, but they may just be enemies. So, until it comes out in, at time of recording, less than 10 days, it's still out there in the air. But, they basically have confirmed, similarly to how Dead Cells did it, enough new music that they have reworked the music selector entirely.
Nice! I didn't hear that part. That's awesome.
Oh yeah, because even people working on the game get a little lost with how much music there is to select, so they reworked that, and there's like 30 original tracks on top of direct ports of existing tracks. They have their in-house composer doing a lot of good work, and then they had guests, including Keijen Church.
AKA the guy I went to Los Angeles to go see not 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, they are doing everything so right.
They are. Oh, and I'm sure I brought this up, but Master Boot Record, aka Keijen Church, did play a Castlevania medley at that show.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, this is a match made in heaven. Of course this is going to be the way this works.
How weird is it that we are living at a time where, and ironically, one of the coolest lore-filled crossover that could be is Vampire Survivor and Power Wash Simulator.
What? Did they announce that too? Wait, what?
No.
Ugh.
No, they didn't. But given these are two games which have no right to be this good, no right to be this involved, and no right to be this passionate about what they do.
That is true. That is very true.
Crazy times in the best of ways sometimes.
I agree.
That. Also, the FAQ spent a surprising amount of time apologizing for the fact that they have, given the amount of content, they have to increase the price of the DLC compared to the other pieces of DLC they offer. Meaning that it's like $4 instead of $3.
I think I'm willing to spend that extra $1, personally speaking.
Yeah. And possibly more. Like, Vampire Survivors is a game that is earning your money.
It is. There's very few games that make me feel like I underpaid for it. That is definitely one of them.
Yes. Like, I think one of the few games that managed to achieve that kind of effect is like Hollow Knight, maybe?
Hollow Knight I think I spent $20 on, and that feels pretty right for what I got. Maybe 30 I would have paid, but I feel like that's a pretty involved game, and spending the amount of money I did makes sense, but at the same time, it's also a good deal shorter than a lot of other games, so,
I mean, it has this effect when you think you're about to be done, and then you open a whole new section and it happens like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
Anyway, good stuff. Play indie games, people.
Play indie games. They've been great this year.
Yeah, and they've been great for a while now.
They really have. while I'm okay giving money to at least AA developers, I don't think I played an actual AAA game in years. I'm okay giving money to AA developers like Sega or whatnot when they do something really well.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, the indie scene has been where I've gotten most of my enjoyment, and I stand by that.
And you and me both, friend.
And I think that is all the time we have for this episode of Music Arcade. Thank you all for joining us on this terrifying, terrifying journey. I believe next episode is going to actually be our FFBE recap. Also, next episode,
yes.
I will not have glasses anymore, so that'll be interesting.
Lots of change on the horizon.
Lots of change on the horizon. We'll see how that goes. And with that, we will see you guys next time. Have a good one, y'all.